could bring you down. Take it from me. Let the music be your night. Let the music be your sunshine. Let it be your sunshine. Let the music be your guide. Let the music make it right. Make it right. This is the time, so let's not waste it. We gotta spread the love and have a celebration. Whoa, 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 whoa. If you let the groovy melody get inside your soul and set you free, set you free. There ain't nothing that could bring you down. Take it from me. Let the music be your light. Let the music be your sunshine. Let it be your sunshine. Let the music be your guide. Let the music make it right. Make it right. Let the music be your light. Let it be your light. Let the music be your sunshine. Let it be your sunshine. Let the music be your guide. Let the music make it right. Make it right. Let the music move, yeah. Let it take control. It's all up to you now. Feel it in your soul. If you feel this music, then put your hands up. Everybody around the world, say put your hands up. If you feel it in your soul, then put your hands up. If you feel this music, then put your hands up. Everybody around the world, say
16 City Council meeting. Mr. Munoz, is there anything to report from closed session?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have one item to report. At the commencement of the meeting, we added a closed session based on some correspondence that we received earlier this afternoon in the matter involving the City of Dana Point versus the Headlands Reserve LLC and Sanford Edward. The item involved a request that the city go to mediation on the matter. The city previously went to mediation on this matter on August 26th, which unfortunately was not successful. We, having received this renewed request to go to mediation, discussed that in closed session, and the council agreed that they would be prepared to return to mediation on some terms that we'll outline in a correspondence. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz. Councilmember Miller, will you please lead the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Councilmember Miller. Well, if you please remain standing, the invocation this evening will be provided by Orange County Sheriff's Department Chaplain Jim Davis.
Shall we pray? Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the beautiful community of Dana Point. We pray your blessing upon this meeting and the city leaders. Give them wisdom and direction and guidance. We pray your blessing on the deputies that are out in the field, our firefighters. We pray your blessing upon our schools, our teachers, administrators, most of all our children and young people. Watch over and protect them, we pray. And thank you for all your blessings in your wonderful name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chaplain Davis. Please be seated. Okay, moving on to presentations and proclamations. First of all, we have Business of the Month, which is Monarch Beach Resort. Rachel Johnson, please proceed.
Good evening, Mayor Tomlinson and members of the council. I am pleased to announce the business of the month for October 2016, the Monarch Beach Resort, formerly known as the St. Regis. Tonight, we are joined by the general manager, Mr. Ian Poland. This beautiful resort started in Dana Point 15 years ago, providing a 5-star coastal experience to people from around the world. This past year, they have gone through a major renovation, not only to their building, but also to their name. On June 1st, the St. Regis officially became the Monarch Beach Resort with the goal of being a resort for the community. They have a beautiful social living room that they encourage the community to come and use for meetings, rates for local memberships, and have focused on reaching out and participating in the community. Working with Dana Hills High School, the Monarch Beach Resort is in a partnership with the ROP program to give students the opportunity to learn about the hospitality industry. In the past year, 16 students participated and have greatly benefited from being able to learn about the hospitality industry as well as gain credit in school. Through this program, the students experience and train in each facet of the industry and work side by side with leaders in hospitality. Focusing on education, the Monarch Beach Resort has also been a big supporter of the Ocean Institute as they have provided some prizes for their biggest fundraiser, the $1 Million Home Raffle. They even host their own tall ship during the Tall Ships Festival, as well as catering the many events that occur during the festival. This year has been a landmark year for the Monarch Beach Resort, and they have found new opportunities in the community to celebrate. Supporting the local arts in the community is important to the Monarch Beach Resort, and this year, the Monarch Beach Resort has become the first corporate sponsor for the Dana Point Symphony. Also working closely with the Dana Point Chamber of Commerce, they have generously become the presenting sponsor for the Dana Point Turkey Trot, with support from all 3 of their brands, the Monarch Beach Resort, the Miraval Spa, and the Monarch Beach Golf Links. The Monarch Beach Resort has become a resort for the community by supporting these and countless other local nonprofits, and by opening their living room to the community. On behalf of the City Council, we would like to congratulate you for being selected as Business of the Month for October, and thank you for all of your service to our Dana Point community. We wish you many years of continued success.
Ian, if you'd like to approach the dais with any guests you may have brought this evening, we have some presentations for you. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you very much. We have some presentations, and I'd just like to say a few words. First of all, I've been going to your hotel there for a number of years, and one of my favorite things is a Sunday brunch, if you can believe it or not. Yes. One of my favorite things was the lobster-infused mashed potatoes, and it's one of the few brunches I've ever been to where you like everything. So I hope you don't change anything in that brunch. It's been really good. But I want to commend you for all you do for the community. You guys are a real asset, and your renovation's very beautiful, and you guys have done a great job, and thank you for everything you do. So I'd like to read this certificate of recognition to you. To Monarch Beach Resort. The City of Dana Point takes great pleasure in featuring Monarch Beach Resort, located One Monarch Beach Resort in Dana Point, and extends our congratulations on being named Dana Point Featured Business of the Month by myself on behalf of the entire City Council and the City of Dana Point, presented this 18th day of October 2016.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next will be Heather Johnson from the Chamber. She would like to say a few words and also present a certificate.
Mr. Mayor, thank you always for having the Chamber with you up here. I really appreciate it. I just want to say specifically that Ian has been with Monarch Beach Resort for, is it 2 years now? 2 years. And he immediately jumped into the community. And with our businesses, the lifeblood is tourism, and Ian represents 1/4 of the T-bid in Visit Dana Point, and really has taken a lead in making sure that they're not only marketing the resorts, but they're marketing Dana Point as a destination. And I just really want to say from our businesses and our board, thank you so much for looking out for Dana Point, and we are so happy to have you part of our community.
Okay, next item is Employee of the Month, Brandy Boca. Deputy City Manager in Public Works, Mark Denny, can you please give us a few words about Brandy?
All right, Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for the opportunity to represent our colleagues in Public Works, that are some of which are here tonight, to honor Brandy on a big night. And while I've only known you, Brandy, for 2 weeks, everything I've heard from all of your colleagues in Public Works I've seen in action. That's right. That's right. Brandy is a really hard worker, and he has one of the most challenging assignments being the city's geologist, and he does it with real good humor and a real teamwork ethic, and he's just a pleasure to be around, and that's one thing that I keep hearing over and over again. He's a pleasure to work with. And so, speaking of working with, Brandy, as you know, is embedded in our Community Development Department, and so I've asked Ursula if she would also say a few words about the great work that he does. So, Ursula.
Thank you. So when I came to the city of Dana Point, I had never worked for a city that had a staff geologist, and I sort of wondered, what does a city geologist do? Well, it wasn't long in this town of Coastal Bluffs that I learned that the city was very well served to have a geologist on site. Brandy, he looks at 50-year bluff top erosion to ensuring that the factors of safety for slope stabilization are okay, to soils conditions, to foundation plans, and so he really ensures the safety of the public. It's a great service that he does for the city of Dana Point. He is very diligent and dedicated. There are many, many times where I see him well past close of business in his office working away on factors of safety or whatever it is. And he also is very conscientious and detail-oriented. I feel very confident in his conclusions on any of his analysis. But I think the biggest compliment I can pay to Brandy is that while Public Works, they think that he's one of their team members, in community development, we think he's one of our team members. And he's really done a great job of bridging the not really divide, but just bridging the two departments together to make sure that we're working together well. And so I really enjoy working with Brandy, and it's a great service that he does for the community. Thank you.
I just have one question for you. What's your favorite rock formation?
I would say it's the San Onofre breccia.
Wow. And maybe you could explain that.
Strongest of them all.
What is that?
It is the rock type that composes the area basically behind Three Arch Bay and into northern Dana Point, forms the headlands. So our famous headlands here, the northern side of the harbor, is composed of San Onofre breccia. It's a resistant rock.
Well, very good. My favorite's the leverite rock. You pick it up and give it to somebody. Leverite here. Okay. A certificate of recognition, Brandy Boca. This October 16th, or October 2016, whereas Brandy Boca began his association for the city as a geologist, contracted through a private engineering firm in April of 2010, and was later hired by the city on August 15th, 2013, as an associate engineer in the Public Works Department. Whereas Brady has been the city's primary expert in geology and soils engineering work for the city, providing soils reports, settlement guidelines, and practical protective recommendations. And whereas Brandy has assured consistent, timely, and professional geotechnical services are provided for our customers in a city where potential bluff failures, landslides, and liquefaction are significant concerns. Whereas Brandy has been the primary geotechnical reviewer for both residential and commercial development projects such as Zephyr Housing, Headland Strand Bluff Homes, South Shores Church, Monarch Coast Apartments, Raintree, and the Union Bank Mixed Use, Monarch Beach Resort, Gloria Day, Church Expansion, and the Doheny Village Plan, all with unique, challenging, and complex technical issues. And whereas in response to 300+% increase in development-related business over the last few years, has regularly worked late, well beyond normal working hours, to meet customer review deadlines and expedited streamlined reviews for more efficient and customer-friendly responses. And whereas Brady's work is respected and appreciated by our customers due to his professionalism, strong work ethic, and well-communicated reviews. And whereas Brady's flexibility, agreeability, and team spirit are evident with the cheerful manner in which he works cooperatively with our building official and our city structural engineer to solve problems while protecting the community with sound decisions. Wow, that's a long one. Okay, now we're at the end. Now, therefore, on behalf of the City Council and citizens of Dana Point, myself and fellow City Council members hereby congratulate Brady Boca upon his selection as the City of Dana Point's Employee of the Month for October 2016, and express our heartfelt appreciation for his devoted service to the citizens of Dana Point and offer our sincere thanks for his exemplary service to our community. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Would you like to introduce your family member?
This is my wife, Janine, my daughter, Bridget, and I have another daughter, Bailey, who's off at UC Davis, bioscience major there. So they're my support group, and we have worked a lot of long hours here at the city, and they've supported me, so I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, and Ursula and Mark, and everybody on the Dana Point team, the Public Works crew. It's a great team to work with, and everybody that I really associate with here at the city is beautiful, and they do a great job, and they're a pleasure to work with.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one roll call vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Are there any items to be removed by staff?
Yes, Mayor Tomlinson. Subsequent to the posting of the agenda, I was made aware that Ursula has a brief presentation on item number 9, award of a contract for the Surfing Heritage Museum. So what I'd like to do is pull that item and ask Ursula to make a presentation before the council this evening.
Okay. Madam Clerk, anybody in the public?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have items 5, 6, and 9 that the city manager already mentioned.
You
Thank
said 5, 6, and 9?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. By the council? Just check here something. I had one, I think. Here, hold on for a second, please. Okay, I think it's been covered. Okay, that'll do it.
I'd like to pull 12 and 14.
12 and 14. Okay. We'll move to the first item, item number 5. Mr. Shotcavy, is the staff report, please?
Of course.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion to move the balance of the consent calendar.
Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion on moving the consent calendar? If not, please cast your vote. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay. Shotcavy, item number 5, please.
Item number 5 is a staff recommendation for consideration of a resolution consenting to the inclusion of properties within the territorial boundaries of the city of Dana Point in the CSCDA Open PACE program and other matters related thereto. As the council is aware, this is an item that staff has been studying for a number of years, and because of serious concerns we have relative to tax implications, subordination of positions on trust deeds and what have you. We've been watching this very carefully, as well as listening to our friends at OCAR, as well as at the state. Tonight, before you is a recommendation, what I'd like to do is ask Mr. Killebrewer to provide a brief overview of the item. Mike?
Thanks, Doug. Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The city is a member of a joint powers authority known as the California Statewide Communities Development Authority, or as Doug mentioned, CSCDA, and they oversee administration of what's known as PACE financing programs. And the resolution before you tonight would be asking for you to approve CSCDA to administer a program in Dana Point. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing. It's a program that was established by the state and made available to private property owners through the mechanism of a city adopting a resolution. The CSCDA is the largest joint powers authority in the state, and as I mentioned, the city is already a member. In cities where PACE programs are available, a private property owner may voluntarily choose to participate in the program to finance the installation of renewable energy generating devices such as solar panels, among others, and/or energy and water efficiency improvements on their home. And they would pay for that through a special assessment that is billed by the county on their property tax bill. Note that we field frequent calls from residents that hear the sales pitches from groups that provide these, and they're asking if the city would be willing to enter into or create such a program in Dana Point so that they could also participate in it. As Doug mentioned, we've been monitoring the implementation and evolution of the state's PACE program since it was formed about 8 years ago. And over the years, we've met dozens of times with a couple of different joint powers authorities and also with firms that those joint powers authorities hire to administer the programs. As mentioned in the staff report, we have been reluctant to recommend that the city participate in a PACE program, mainly due to what we viewed as insufficient disclosure and at least early on some questionable marketing materials that we saw in play. The state of California recently passed in August Assembly Bill 2693 that created the PACE Preservation and Consumer Protections Act that all these PACE providers now are required to abide by. The bill passed both the Assembly and the Senate unanimously. It's also attached to the report, and it's quite lengthy as far as what the requirements are for these providers to live up to. And it does address many of the current concerns that staff has had about the PACE programs. PACE programs are not for everybody. As with any financing, obviously, buyer beware. Be aware that PACE loans take a priority lien position and that some banks may require that it be paid off in either a refinancing or a sale of the property. So it's not guaranteed that it would transfer from one owner to the other or from one loan if you go to refinance your home. Be aware that the interest rate that you will be paying and compare it to the interest rates available from traditional lending institutions such as your bank or your credit union. We believe the PACE industry, the California's PACE industry still has some improvements that should be made, particularly as it relates to lending practices that, at least personally, I think should incorporate debt-to-income reviews and not just leaning on equity and looking what equity is available in somebody's home before they will loan money, to actually look if they can afford to repay it. That is not a requirement. They do not look up a person's credit score. That being said, at this time, staff is recommending that the council consider this resolution before it, and we do have a representative from CSCDA here. And I know I saw some of the speaker slips that we've got other folks here that want to speak to this item as well. So with that, we're available to answer questions.
Any questions from council members? No? Not yet. Okay. I'll open up to public comment. Okay, first speaker is Gary Marcades.
Good evening. My name is Gary McCready, 20-year resident, property owner, and realtor. I think you've already received a letter from the Orange County Association of Realtors. And while we support voluntary incentive-based programs that encourage homeowners to maximize cost-effective thermal, solar, electrical, and water-efficient improvements, we do not support property-assessed clean energy, which is PACE financing, for a couple of reasons. Loose lending practices that played a large role in the housing crash of 2008. I think we all remember that. PACE presents a similar risk because qualification is based on home equity rather than the borrower's ability to repay. This, by the way, falls into one of the U.S. Department of Treasury's four primary forms of predatory lending. Secondly, the amount borrowed is structured as a property tax assessment. This means the amount borrowed attaches to the property itself rather than the owner, which restricts a buyer's ability to qualify for a mortgage, and it negatively affects the owner's ability to sell the property or refinance. What do you mean? Well, thank you for asking. Let's say, for example, the interest on the assessment is much higher than any other conventional financing alternatives, such as a home equity line of credit, a home equity loan. They are usually 5.25% to 8.99%, with an additional 4.99 initiation fee. That means that this amounts to an APRs of over 10%. So in a scenario, if you look right now, the housing market in Dana Woods, a house is $800,000, and a buyer comes in and they have a first loan, a second loan. Now we pull the tax, and guess what? Now there's a PACE loan on there for over 10%. They're not going to qualify to buy the house, and that's happened more than once in our office in Soter Properties. By the way, the amount borrowed is also structured as a super priority lien. This again restricts a buyer's ability to qualify for a mortgage. It negatively affects the owner's ability to sell the property at refinance, and of course, their equity. The loans, by the way, are not being sold by financial institutions, so they're not held to the same standard as other lending institutions. They're being sold by contractors who have no financial expertise, who often mislead and overcharge people. The consumer is promised a utility cost offset that usually does not materialize, by the way. In fact, the consumer often ends up deep in the red. So for these reasons, OCAR and Realtors oppose PACE financing, and we trust that you do as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Brent Nubian, followed by Lacey Robertson.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Brent Nubian with the Wide Green Energy Fund. I'm a manager of district development and government relations here in Southern California for Wide Green. We are here to obviously encourage the adoption of PACE. It's a new industry. It's dramatically changed in the last year. And what it really does is just give contractors another option. Contractors are already working in your communities, selling their products and using various financing methods. They may be saying, here's our product. How would you like to pay? They say cash, credit card, maybe go through the time to get a home equity line of credit, or home equity loan. There's a Green Sky, which is a traditional financing method, and then they'll introduce Hero. Homeowners will sometimes say, I want to hear more about what Hero offers and how it works. And sometimes they'll choose that. So it's not for everybody, but many people like it because it is it won't show up on your credit file. It's, again, attached to your property. So there's some other benefits as well. Yeah, in the last year, the industry has really began to scale. As it has scaled to the tune of $2.5 billion, and I don't think all the quarter three numbers are in yet. And that primarily is in the last 12 to 18 months. So as the competition has heated up, which is a good thing, that has helped lower interest rates, fees, consumer protections have been improved. As was mentioned, AB 2693 was also just signed by the governor, in fact, about 3 weeks ago. And also, many of the major providers have also all adopted PACE Nation consumer protection policy, which is PACE Nation is a national nonprofit promoting PACE across the nation. In fact, 32 other states have now approved PACE enabling legislation. About 50 of them have operational programs. Wide Green is operating our program in Florida currently, so I believe this is going to continue to scale and gain in momentum moving forward. So a little bit about Wide Green. We are a leader in commercial and residential PACE, and our Joint Powers Authority, because we all operate under a JPA, was just validated, judicial validation last August, so we've really expanded our territory this last 12 to 18 months. And here in Orange County, we're available, I believe, in 16 cities. So we obviously want to offer our services and add choice and competition as well. So again, we support the industry. I think it's continued to grow. I come from contracting side of things. So it's just another option for contractors. And not all of them reason we're actually competing for contractor business now, which I think is improving the industry as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Lacey Peterson, followed by Dustin Rydlick, I believe it is.
Good evening. It's Lacey Robertson, too. Recently, PACE loans have increased. This growth, and it's actually been growth of over 300% on homes. Sadly to say, this growth has not come with honest dealings. PACE loans are given to anyone and everyone that owns a property, has equity, and is not in active bankruptcy, regardless if they can repay the loan. If this is not predatory lending, I don't know what is. PACE loans have increased in communities where seniors, low and middle-class families reside because unsuspecting or unsophisticated homeowners live there, and contractors and sales representatives selling the product are often least questioned, if questioned at all. If this is not predatory lending, I don't know what is. Warning comes before destruction, and this is why I'm here. I represent the families that have and are currently being victimized as I speak. I'm asking that you highly reject any future adoption of PACE financing until the guidelines are amended to protect consumers more, because AB 2693 was just not good enough. It was good, but there still needs to be more changes. I'm asking that you review any contracts that you have approved and consider rejecting them as well. Failure to adhere to this warning is voluntary signing Dana Point up for housing and a financial crisis. Right now, your unqualified, unlicensed, unregistered individuals conduct mortgage and financing related activities in would be in Dana Point if you approve PACE financing. And they often don't have the same motivation as a consumer who would say and do anything for the next sale. If homeowners don't or can't afford the upgrades, I'm here to tell you that 100% financing is not the answer. I actually have a couple examples as well, especially as it relates to not taking income into consideration when they're doing these upgrades. For instance, a lady, they do save on their utility bills. Most of them do. But the cost to save does not justify. So in one case I have a homeowner, she exchanged a $250 utility bill for nearly $500 PACE assessment. And for instance, I'm in a transaction right now for a homeowner who the products and the labor is $53,507. That's for solar panels and windows. The payoff demand, they have to pay off up to 1 month and 2 days after the date of the payoff. That's huge. That's added extra interest. And now the payoff is $61,105.47.
Thank you for your comments. Dustin Rylick, is it?
Yes, it is, sir.
Thank you. Followed by Aaron McKeon.
Yes, thank you very much. Dustin Rylick, Senior Director of Municipal Development for the California Hero Program. I'm actually not on agenda tonight, but I'm in full support of your staff report, and I think that Mr. Killebrew did a great job in telling you what the issues are, the background. I've met with he and Doug several times to go over the PACE programs. We, the HERO program, are not on agenda, but I'd ask that in the future, after approving of a PACE program this evening, that we could possibly be brought back in the future. About 80% of PACE assessments that have happened in the state of California, as you see in that packet, about 79,000 projects in California, 4,600 projects that are here in Orange County have been with the HERO program. And some of these different concerns that you got in your letter and your packet from OCAR are just not really valid concerns. We actually have a real estate department at the HERO program, and we actually pull the MLS and scrub it against our HERO assessments on a daily basis and reach out to the agent who's the listing agent to help them with how they can work through a transaction. Here in Orange County, there's been 15,000 sales of homes just this year. We've done 132 projects in that have even had a sale or a refinance here in Orange County. 80 of those we actually subordinated at the time of sale to help the transaction along, and then there were others, 40 some odd projects that the homeowner actually paid it off at time of sale. It's part of the negotiation. If I come to your home and you've got brand new windows for your $700,000 home and your next door neighbor has a $700,000 home with brand new windows, I'm not likely to want to have an assessment on my property. So part of the negotiation will be to pay off that assessment. And it's all at the time of transaction. We reach out to the real estate community to educate them, to give them different tools so that they can actually work through these transactions. We've been very effective in working with the Pacific West Association of Realtors in northern Orange County, where they've actually had more of the projects up there. I'm from San Clemente. San Clemente has this program available. Laguna Beach to your north has this program available. 24 cities in Orange County have the program available, and 440 jurisdictions in the state of California have this program available. What the HERO program is and what PACE is it's just simply an option for your constituents. And the more programs that you make available to your constituents, competition will drive down the price. They said that the rates were upwards of 8.99. Yeah, back 3 years ago they were. When I first sat down with Doug and Mike, our rates were 8.99. Since then, they've come down to the range of 5 to 8.25%, and our fees were 6.95% before, and now they're 4.99. Over time, things come down price-wise when you provide competition. I would say please move forward with PACE.
Aaron McKeon, followed by Tony Capoletti.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Erin McKeon, and I am here also with Dustin. I work with Renovate America. We are the administrators of the HERO program. And I understand we're not on an agenda, but I also would like to talk a little bit about what we are doing out here in the community to help make sure that real estate agents, homeowners are educated so that hopefully in the future we can move forward with the HERO program. My job is to help educate the real estate community. I am here as a resource. I'm the regional manager in Orange County. I have spoken with hundreds, almost thousands of real estate agents, educating them on this financing. As Dustin mentioned, we had a very successful meeting with the Pacific West Association of Realtors, with their CEO, their government affairs director, their board of directors, and because we've done so many assessments in North County, they really wanted to make sure that they were educated on the most up-to-date information about the program. This program, again, is an option. We're not just approving 100% of the people that are applying. We have underwriting criteria at the HERO program. We have very robust consumer protections that include maximum funding amounts. We do calls to confirm terms, so we've actually expanded that. We used to make phone calls to anybody 64 and over to confirm terms. We've actually expanded that and are ramping up to a 100% call out. What that means is that any homeowner that's interested in this form of financing, they're getting a call from somebody at the HERO program. It's not on the contractors to explain the disclosures and review all the financing portions. Really, that's a recorded call that's made from somebody at the HERO program to make sure that we're getting the right people into this program. We don't have a 100% approval rate. So I think that, through my experience educating people through OCAR, through the Pacific West Association, there's been a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of misinformation, and fortunately through the development of this department that I work in, we've been able to, help clear up some of that confusion and some of that misunderstanding. So, for instance, as you may be aware, this program started out in Riverside and San Bernardino, where there was a lot of opposition. They created an entire resolution against the HERO program and PACE financing. They have since rescinded and are working in cooperation with the HERO program specifically to make sure that their members are educated. So for that, I hope that we can go ahead and move forward with the HERO program at a future time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Tony Capoletti, followed by Tony Lynn.
Thank you for having me. I'm Tony Capitelli, Government Affairs Director for the Orange County Association of Realtors. I'm not going to repeat everything that Gary McCready said. If only I had an accent like he did to sound that good, I would. But I really just want to be here in case you have any questions about our position. Refer you to the packets that we provided you, which includes the Colorado Law Review article. But I also want to emphasize a point. One, of course, our concerns are valid. And it's no misinformation. There was lack of information for so long, and now we're starting to get the flood of stories. We're starting to get the information, and that's why we're taking a more active role in this. But in terms of this just being another option for your residents, if it were just another option for your residents, you'd have all these other options in here asking for your permission. But this is the only option that has to ask for your permission. And the reason is because they have to ask for your approval in giving them your tax levying authority. And they can't ask for it directly because you can't give tax levying authority to a private company, so they have to do so through these other government agencies that have already been mentioned. So it's not as if you can just allow this into your city. You're entering into a joint powers authority with limited oversight ability, and you're complicit in what happens to your residents because of it. So I just want to emphasize that point. Thank you.
Followed by Michael
My name
McKenna.
is Tony. I'm from Lion Home Solutions. My company serves LA County, San Diego County, and also Orange County. What we do is we do home improvements and stuff like that for homeowners. What I found most beneficial for having PACE program is the homeowners do have options. Not many homeowners can use credit cards to pay for the projects or the lump sum in cash. So that's why PACE program has been very beneficial for working individuals such as myself to be able to finance other projects that we were hoping to do for the home. So personally, I believe that this is a great product to offer to homeowners and to do the improvements. And I vote yes to go forward because it's very beneficial.
Thank you for your comments. Michael McKinnon.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Michael McKinney. On behalf of my client, Renew Financial, we are on your agenda tonight. We are part of the Open PACE program, which is authorized by CSCDA. You've heard a lot of the comments regarding this. We're here to answer questions. I have with me tonight Jeremy Hutman, who is the Regional Director for Renew Financial. I have to disagree with some of OCAR's comments. First of all, we're here because the state law asks us to be here, to get your authority to operate in your city, not to get your taxing authority. The other members of the industry who are here in support of that. You have Y-Green and you have Hero here. So I disagree with that level. Since the last 2 years, Renew Financial has done a little over 10,000 projects within the state of California in its 2-year history. Many of the issues and the horror stories that you're hearing from OCAR simply are the minority. They're not the majority. They're sensationalized in the press. They're sensationalized by Hero or by OCAR. I also want to say this. I represent Renew Financial in San Bernardino County, Riverside County, and Orange County. I have one major opposition in realtors, the Orange County Association of Realtors. Other organizations, we don't have an issue with. They're educated, they understand it. OCAR refuses to meet. And if you can't meet with your opposition, you cannot negotiate. So members of the council, I'm here to answer questions. I'm also here to urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the final public comment portion on that item. I'll open up the council for any further questions, discussion. You know, I'd like to make a motion. You know, there's been a flood of material on this on the last few hours and the last day. I'd like to, you know, possibly move this forward to the next council meeting because I need more time to consider all the things that have been put before me this evening and what I've heard today. So I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion to support the mayor.
Okay. Any further discussion on that motion? Please cast your ballot. Okay. Yeah, I can open up discussion on the item. Go ahead.
No, what are we doing?
Well, I would like to move it to another, when I have more time to review all the late materials that have come in and some of the things that have happened. So I'd like to move the whole item to a future council meeting, probably the next council meeting. So let's take a vote on that first.
Well, under Robert's rules, a motion to table an item actually cuts off discussion, but certainly you can discuss it if you want to, really at the mayor's discretion.
I think I'm uncomfortable enough with the matter to move it forward to the next council meeting. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 4-1 with, who is it? Oh, Councilmember Miller in dissent. Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, Mr. Shockavy's staff report.
Yes, item number 6 is an exciting item for me, so if the council will indulge me, that's right,
Yeah,
Mr. Schultz.
if I may, Mr. Mayor, I have a potential conflict of interest on this item, so I'm going to recuse myself for this item, and if staff could come get me when it's done.
We'll certainly make sure you
that'd be
come
great.
back. Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Thanks so much.
Madam Clerk, please reflect that Councilmember Schultz has now left the chambers.
Okay, now that Mr. Schultz has left the chambers, item number 6 is a very exciting item for me. As the council is aware, public safety is something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's probably the top priority that I've had as a city manager. Having come from a full-service city, I've really come to appreciate the economies of scale that we have in providing a terrific level of programming to our very diverse needs here in Dana Point. We're extremely well policed. We have the benefit of getting the best that the Orange County Sheriff's Department have to offer. Because of the leadership that we have a line of people who want to come and work in Dana Point. But most of our deputies don't leave unless it's for promotion. So again, we really have a sound base for a community basing program that I think is the best in the contract system anywhere. I want to thank Russ Chilton for having the leadership to bring this forward. This is something we've tried over the years. And the reason being is that because of the economies that we enjoy of having a contract law enforcement model, having our deputies here to deploy really allows us in rapid time to, one, achieve certain economies of they no longer commute to Aliso Viejo, which when you talk about when they go to Aliso and they dress and they brief and they do their administrivia there, it can take as much as 2 hours out of a shift of productive time. Also, when you take a look at Dana Point and who we are in our demographic, we have some of the finest five-star resorts in the world that are international tourism destination. And any day of the week, we can have a leader of any country in the world or people of political or other such notoriety visiting. We have groups that frequent here. We have presidents of the United States who've come here. I remember the president of North Vietnam came to spend a night here, and that was an interesting endeavor. But having said that, we also have a harbor, and we have a high school with somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 students across the street that keep me awake at night worrying, given what's going on in the world today. This is very, very important to have our deputies really allow us to take the program to really embrace the concepts of community-based policing by having them basically show up for work here, dress here, brief here, take their shift, shower, dress, and go home. Mike has some numbers that he'll share with you when we get to the actual numbers of it. But when you look at, again, the level of value we get from protection by the Orange County Sheriff's Department compared to our neighbors to the north, Laguna Beach, Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, Seal Beach, we're a very safe community and a very well-policed. I think this will take us to the next level to really embrace that. Russ has worked tirelessly with the command staff at the Orange County Sheriff's Department and as well as our facilities team to come up with, I think, a presence here that Dana Point is long overdue and very much deserving. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to ask Mike Rose to give an overview of the components of what's before you tonight. And then Mike Killebrew is here to discuss the financial aspect and what are the numbers, what they comprise in there when you take a look at what the various line items are. So with that, Mike Rose, why don't you give the council an overview of what's before the council this evening?
Sure, thanks, Doug. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Item number 6 this evening, as Doug was discussing, is proposed expansion of our police services offices and facilities here at City Hall. This project was designed to provide for our daily needs of the deputies and police services staff that service Dana Point in an effort to replace the use of our South County substation at Aliso Viejo. The project, as it's designed, includes 2 large locker rooms that house individual equipment lockers for each deputy, which are large enough to securely contain all of their issued uniforms and gear. The locker rooms include shower and toilet facilities and bunk rooms, actually, for deputies that may have a long drive with only a few hours between shifts, and Russ can speak to that. Does happen occasionally, especially with the amount of overtime that some of the deputies end up working and our activities and shift schedules. It's also good to note that the bunk rooms will also play an important role during an emergency operations center activation where we would have staff working 24 hours a day here at City Hall. So in addition to the locker rooms, the project also includes an office for our patrol sergeant, an armory and an equipment cage, an evidence locker room, a work area for the deputies to strip and clean their weapons, a room for deputies and investigators to conduct interviews, a soft room to meet with families, and a desperately needed storage area is included in there as well. So storage is always a high priority for us. It's important to note that included in the renovation quote are all of the required equipment lockers, the evidence lockers, the weapon storage racks, all those perfunctory items that we've talked about as being included. Those are all part of the project budget. Outside of the specific contractor's bid, but included in the overall project budget is an equipment and server digital rack that the Orange County Sheriff's Department needs for maintaining all of the data collected from the dash-mounted cameras and the body-worn cameras for the deputies. So that's basically, in a nutshell, all of the items that are included in the project that's on the table. In addition to that, I'm sure Michael mentioned, we're also renovating 4 City Hall restrooms, for the public restrooms here at City Hall. So that's included in this overall project.
Let me also emphasize one thing before we turn it over to Mike and get down into the detail of the numbers. Some of the staff who was here when I got here remember that City Hall was a commercial building with city offices. It really didn't resemble a civic center. It didn't resemble a city hall. We were the guest of a commercial business. This is the last piece in the puzzle of the last 15 years, because when you take a look at what we have now, we have an EOC that some FEMA inspectors consider to be the envy of a lot of states. Mike Rose and Aaron Rosen and Jeremy Kirchner be complimented in the emergency program they've put together, because again, you won't find it in many counties, let alone many states. So we have that capability. We also have, when you take a look at it, we even have our friends from the VFW, Bob Fowler, and we have the Historical Society here. We even have a congressman's office. This is really the last step in creating what I think is a truly comprehensive civic center that serves the community well. And I just think that, again, I couldn't be more pleased that it's here tonight. Mike, why don't you touch on some of the numbers?
Thanks, Doug. Just a couple things I want to point out. When we were pitching this project to the City Council when they adopted the 2-year budget a year and a half ago, if you will, we had the police services substation build out at $560,000 in last year's budget. Since that time, and working through a lot of the requirements from the Orange County Sheriff's Department, there were some components that we had to beef up. Body-worn cameras are coming. We had to beef up the technology infrastructure here. That added quite a bit of cost here, because our initial thoughts were we'd be able to handle it with our own bandwidth, if you will, and servers, just to offload data go in that direction. But we had to add about $100,000 there. Part of the sales pitch also, though, was that, literally I drove over to the Aliso Viejo substation at a shift change and took a look at what it took timing-wise from when a deputy gets on the clock to when they get here. And sometimes they have to get a specific briefing relevant to Dana Point as opposed to the regional when they get up in Aliso Viejo. And by the time you get done doing all the calculations, even assuming just one deputy in a car, and we don't always have that, we do have field training as well that takes place here, we calculated that we'd add about 2,000 additional patrol hours on our streets by eliminating that commute. So I don't know the exact number that the Sheriff's Department uses nowadays as far as productive hours, not counting training and so forth, but I think it's in the 1,400 hour range. So this adds about 1.5 deputies almost, without doing anything but moving their starting point to here. It also adds about 1,500 productive hours for our community service officers in the little white cars that drive around and help out with all kinds of various duties for the Sheriff's Department. All that being said, the annual additional productive time value, and this was 18 months ago, was about $500,000 a year. The annual cash savings from not having to pay mileage on county vehicles going back and forth was about $125,000 a year. So there was cash savings and there's productivity as well. Back to the numbers, that we had the $560,000 in last year's budget, and the proposal is we carried that over. We still have it. It was unspent from last year. It was in last year's ending fund balance. We had a $250,000 set aside this fiscal year to rehab the administrative services wing. And in government, at least those that don't want to get beat up, leaders that don't want to get beat up, the last thing they do is administrative services. So we're proposing to punt on that one again to a future budget year and to commit the money into this overall project. as well as spending $394,000 in additional unassigned fund balance. And to report out, this is unassigned fund balance that wasn't budgeted 2 years ago, but is in essence, we had $1.5 million of surplus left over at the end of last year that carried into this year that we were proposing to spend, close to $400,000 of. So those are the complicated numbers to get to the project that we pitched. And with that, I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any questions from council members? Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You did a good job explaining where the numbers came from, but I'm still a little concerned that we're going from 560,000 to 1.2 million. I know that part of this is restroom renovation for $172,000. How many restrooms are we doing?
Four.
Okay, maybe.
About 40,000, 42,000 apiece.
And these are standard tile restrooms bid out under public contract code, which we're required to do.
Right. And how many servers are we getting for $100,000? That sounds, for how many body cameras do we have?
For the sheriff interface or the backbone, that's a critical component because currently all the patrol deputies are equipped with patrol-mounted video camera system. It requires a robust server system to really upload all that information. The department is moving towards obtaining body-worn camera. There's a lot of new technology coming out in law enforcement where we really need the capacity to grow that because the technology is growing, it's not shrinking, and it is coming our way. So we want to be prepared to accept that new technology. And so that component alone, if I don't have the number in front of me, I read it's about $107,000 through the company L3, which does all the sheriff's department backbone.
Okay, all right. And one final question, and this doesn't really have anything to do with the facility, but I was looking at our bidders, and I'm a little confused. Conan Construction came in with the lowest bid by almost $100,000, about $90,000. But it says in here it was deemed non-responsive as they were not self-performing a sufficient percentage of the work with their own forces as required in our What does that mean? I understand that you're going to sub out a lot of it, is I think what it says, right?
Well, I will speak to it, and if necessary, we can ask Mr. Sinacore to give you some additional details on that. But essentially, the Public Contract Code requires that a contractor in a public work self-perform, meaning with their own force account, their own employees, self-perform a certain percentage of the work on any public work project. In the case of Conan Construction, when we did the background check on his bid, we found that there was, I want to say approximately 85%, maybe more, of his project work was done through subcontract. So it was too much, and he didn't have the force account, the staff to self-perform that work.
I guess I don't understand why they have to have a certain percentage of it done. Why couldn't they sub it all out if they wanted to? I mean, I'm looking at this as costing us almost $90,000 based on a technicality that they're all insured and they're all doing, acceptable work. I guess I'm confused on
My understanding
this
is
piece of it.
it's a function of the California Contract Code and the way that
State
public
law.
works are bid out.
It's a state law. Got it. That's all.
Sorry, I should have led
I
with
thought
that.
I thought you were
mandate,
getting
call
at
it what
that,
you
but I
will.
was like, okay. All right, thank you.
Any further questions? I do have one for Russ. So you're saying currently our systems are in danger of being antiquated, and this extra money we're spending will bring our systems up to current standards and possibly allow for future improvement?
Yeah, absolutely. There's tremendous technology that's emerging in law enforcement, and we need to be prepared to meet those demands. It's not if, it's when we get this technology. That is a large component. When I had them come down to do the estimate, I was shocked. There's another component in this project, property evidence.
There's certain standards that have to be met when you're talking about securing evidence, and there's lockers that have to meet certain standards, and that component is, $30,000. These aren't gym lockers. So when you're talking about building a police station, there's certain standards that have to be met. This is specialized equipment. It's not off-the-shelf Radio Shack equipment or IKEA. This is custom-built equipment specific for law enforcement's needs. So there is going to be a cost increase in that associated with that.
That's all I have. Okay, well, seeing no further questions from council members, we'll go to our single public comment this evening. Mr. Buckhill, please.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you again. From Capistrano Beach, longtime resident. Advocate of low spending, and this one just smacked me in the face. We've been going to a bunch of candidate forums, which are very interesting, people running to join you in November. And several topics have come up. There's a feeling that the city isn't controlling spending adequately. Money is flowing out too easily. That's why the total funds available keep decreasing. And this is one of the examples. First off, let me congratulate the legal group on agreeing to, I guess, mediation or some kind of negotiation to try and save the outrageous costs we've been spending on litigation. Each one of these forums, that was the number one bitch of all 5 of the candidates, saying we've got to stop spending all this money and find ways to solve our problems without these huge court costs. Now, the second one is just watching every penny. This department has gone in the last 10 years from 7,000,000 let me get the right digit, 7,262,000 to this year projecting 12 million. That's a 68% cost increase in the cost of police services for Dana Point. Likewise, this particular item went from $560,000 last year, that budget was approved in June, to the current number, which I added all these things together, the 750, the 100,000, and the 15,000. Plus, we've already spent $66,000 of that money. That total is $931,000 for an item that used to be 1 year ago $560,000. It seems like a crazy cost escalation here. And the restrooms, they're terrible, and they do need to be cleaned up, but toilets are $200 or $300 a piece, and how much are those walls that separate them? And new cabinets, new tile, $40,000 a piece. You could build that number of square feet from scratch, including the roof building and everything else. This is an existing building. And then locker rooms and bunk rooms and all this other stuff. Does it really all need to be here? And $100,000 worth of servers to download cameras we don't really have right now? Why don't we take those cameras over to the existing one after hours or something? Send one person. And the idea that we're going to save all these hours, if there isn't a reason for those briefings that take place over in Aliso Viejo, I assume there are going to be briefings here too. In each of these candidate forums, people complain that they weren't getting enough police presence on the street. Traffic fines and so forth are down to almost zero. They were worried about safety, driving, speeding, and so forth. Is this really the right action to increase the police services for our country or for our city? Or is this just wild spending? So I ask you all to reconsider, is this the best way? And that extra $90,000?
Thank you for your comments. I'll open this up to discussion for council members. Councilmember Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm an active proponent of contract cities. Mr. Shalkevich began his comments talking about from a full-service city in Whittier, which maintains their own police department. I think the cost per hour is a little bit higher with a contract city, but we're a lot easier to adjust our spending during times of recession when necessary. our world, our country, I think twice a month, I'm reading about a police shooting. A police officer was shot across this country. Palm Springs, Los Angeles, Florida, New Orleans. Things aren't getting safer out there. And we're not just going to sit around and wait for it and hope that we can control it with what we got. My computer at home serves me well, but I quit going to Fry's because there's a lot of nice stuff out there. But when you know that I spent 22 years in the Navy with Navy intelligence, 16 years with Navy intelligence. The technology, we have always been on top in the world in technology. And there's no reason now to start to back down. None whatsoever. This idea of Lily just freely spending money is absurd. This council for 4 years has not incurred a lawsuit. Prior councils have and left us holding the bag. So the comments that you're making are absolutely incorrect. And it frustrates me when you do that. Where we're going with this is, are we going to have a safe city like was mentioned? Who are the people that come here besides the residents? What is the threat that's going to come with it, with being a destination city? I think some of your arguments are absurd in trying to coddle to those who you may think will do better in the future. Those are my comments.
Anybody else? Mr. Miller, please.
These restrooms, and I saw that number, it blows me away. I'm okay with these other things. I've been through a lot of those community forums as well. I've been to a couple of them anyway. And they're correct. They talk about we need more patrols on the street. And I think this is going to do that. I mean, we're adding 2,000 patrol hours. Is that what you said? Somebody said 2,000. And community services hours, you said 1,500 community service hours. That's a substantial amount of patrol time that can be used throughout our city. I understand that this is expensive, and building a police station is always going to be expensive. I mean, they use different level of technology and security. My two concerns when I looked at this were, it was twice what we had originally estimated, and I understand that, but I was concerned about these restrooms and really this mobile vision, this $100,000 for servers. I mean, that sounds exorbitant to me. I don't understand the technology that a police force needs. So, I'm looking at this saying, if this is what we need the bandwidth. I'm assuming it's not just servers.
Right, that's correct. It's not just the servers, it's the technology that's in the car. Like Mr. Hill pointed out, the whole idea of bringing that technology here is we're trying to keep our deputies here.
Right.
One of the things about law enforcement, it's an interesting profession because most people spend their entire life never having to use a law enforcement officer's services. And so it's really hard for them to understand the cost associated with law enforcement. And only then, when we have a critical incident and they see the resources come together and that we render a situation safe, do people say, oh, I get it. So I do understand Mr. Hill's concerns that, yeah, this is a huge commitment, no doubt about it. But in my opinion, I think it's a good move. And if it's the council's desire to go in a different direction, we will still serve this community well. We will still be out there. We will always still rise to the occasion. This is something that is there in a way to try and do everything we possibly can to enhance service, period.
It's a commitment to law enforcement. It's a commitment to public safety. When you talk about return on investment, you know, we're not making widgets here. This is, you're buying a service, you know. And the reality is, there are going to be people who will always not be pleased with the service. There's always going to be those people out there. We try, and that's the best we can do. Thank you. Mr. Kilber, one more question. You know, there's a lot of accusations out there that we spend wildly and we're in deficit spending. And I understand that there are going to be years that we do spend and we do incur deficit spending when we're doing large projects. Now, we have saved the money for those projects, correct? So there were surplus years that we've saved up, and now we have the reserves to do projects like this. Is that correct?
Yes, because we haven't debt financed anything. We've taken on no loans to do any of the work that we've done. It's all been from a surplus from 1 year or from several years accumulated, and then the projects are discussed here in the council chambers and decided on.
So I guess that's kind of what I'm getting to. You know, when I think about deficit spending, I think more of what are our operational costs annually, right? And what our revenues are. And as long as our revenues are higher than our operational costs, we're in good shape, correct?
Correct, and
so-
one easy test of that is to look at the reserves. So the
Right.
city council has a stated policy for reserves. The city's always maintained those reserves, with the one exception 3 years ago when $2.5 million was used out of a capital reserve to bridge a gap in the town center plan project. That has since been refunded. It's been rebuilt.
Okay.
And the reserves have been intact the entire time, including all the way through the Great Recession. When we took a 40% hit on our largest revenue, our hotel tax, we took a 40% hit, and we never had to dip into those reserves, even though a stated purpose of our emergency reserve is for such a situation. And we did not have to dip into that.
Okay, so basically what we're talking about here are I don't know if reserve is the right word for this, but these are funds that we've saved over the years through our surplus years that we are now using on capital projects.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So this isn't going to impact our ability to pay our bills?
No.
Or to pay our employees or keep our lights on in the city, correct?
No.
All right.
You know, the
Okay.
fact that we have these reserves and the strong financial position of the city and quite candidly, the conservative practices of this council, we have the ability to do this where a lot of other cities don't. And that's one of the things I'm proud of, and I feel a big part of my legacy is what we've been able to do and still maintain those adequate reserves above what other cities would even hope to have. So the fact of the matter is I'm very proud to say to the city council, you can make this investment in public safety, one, because the money's there, you've saved it, and the community deserves it. Because again, you know, I spent the first 12 years of my life in a need-to-know environment, and I can tell you, you know, anytime anything goes on in the world, whether it be in Mumbai, India, or in Brooklyn, New York, or Afghanistan, we usually get a phone call within a few minutes with a threat assessment because of who lives here, who visits here. I mean, where did SEAL Team 6 go to celebrate their Christmas party after they took out Osama bin Laden?
Yeah, I know.
And so I'm just saying, you know, and that was in the past. But having said that, we are prepared for anything and everything, and you folks can sleep well at night knowing that you're great stewards of a community because we are one of the safest and best police cities in the state.
And I agree with that, Mr. Chkevis, and I appreciate that. That being said, I still have heartburn over these restrooms. That's a lot of money for restrooms. You know, the rest of this, I can live with this. I understand the technology for the police, the policing systems, with the technology, with everything we're seeing in the press these days, and the technology that's being forced onto our policemen to record everything that happens with them. I understand we are going to need this. With that said, is there a way we can break these restrooms out from this?
So, yes,
We will remove
by,
the
by
restrooms.
design, you received two bids for two projects that we combined and bid out together to try and take advantage of an economy of scale and having one contractor do both and bid on both. That being said, there are two separate bid schedules, and we can delete one bid schedule in its entirety from the project if the council so chooses.
Well, I don't know. I understand what you're trying to do with the economy of scales. I just haven't had a chance to look at, this is just a mind-boggling number to me for 4 restrooms, 170.
Allow us
As a point of reference, if I can, Doug, real quickly, I had this same contractor, as it states in the report, was the contractor who won the bid to do the public works renovation a few years ago. At that time, we asked them for, not as part of the original bid, but we asked them for a change order bid to renovate the same restrooms that we're talking about here. At that time, as a change order bid on that project, the bid came back higher than this bid did as a separate project.
Change order, that's where they make their money.
So,
I get it.
just as a comparison, of course, you're right, yes.
But
Change order is always
Mike,
gonna
Mike,
be one, but-
the answer to the council member's question directly, we can remove them, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So let's remove them and bring them back at a future date.
Done.
Is it possible, well, and I don't want to lose the economy of scales on this. I mean, this is relatively new. I haven't had a chance to look at these bids and see what's going on and what we're trying to accomplish on our restrooms. I understand they need to be updated. I use them too, and they need it. If we approve the rest of this evening, when will you award the bid? And is it possible to come back in and say, hey, they want to take a look at these restrooms and what's going on here? Maybe we have to make some adjustments, but I still want that economy of scale if we decide to go forward with it. How are they going to respond to that?
I would have to talk with them offline. I can't specifically say that we could hold that bid and award it separately. I'm honestly not sure if we eliminate that.
Is this
that
a
bid schedule.
time-sensitive bid? Is this
Mike?
something that we could take a look at that piece of it separately? And
I think we could.
Yes, we could. So why don't we remove it from tonight?
Sure.
We'll study it, revisit it with the contractor, and see if there can be a better number. But again, not to use the pun, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're not here about restrooms tonight.
I agree.
We're here about public safety and
That's
policing.
what I wanted to get to tonight
Yeah.
is, that's, I can't get my head around that. And I don't want to wrap that into our police station because that's not what this is about. So we can remove that.
You could move the item with the police services bid schedule and not the restroom bid schedule.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, before we take a second, I'd like to make a few comments myself. I think public safety is paramount for this community, and to have 2,100 more hours in our community here in Dana Point makes a lot of sense to me. And we'll have guys that can, and gals that can stay here in the station. They'll be close to where they work. And who wants to drive another hour from where you have to finally go to work? I'm very much in favor of the police station being here. So I think we need to keep the edge on technology so that we can have improvements available to officers in the future that they can use to help apprehend criminals that are doing horrible things in our communities. We need this here. And if we have to forestall some restrooms, I think I'd rather have public safety over nice new restrooms. But keep in mind, I've done a few restrooms in my life in buildings, and they're expensive. There's a lot of things involved in it, but I'd certainly be willing to entertain a motion to do this without the restroom component added into it.
I believe the motion was made by Mr. Miller.
So I'll second that. Go ahead.
Did you second? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, like everyone else, when I first saw this on the consent calendar, I saw it was originally $560,000, and then it went up by a large sum. It did, of course, raise red flags, but, it's been addressed now. One of the big things was the bathrooms. So that's a good thing, because it seemed like, why do we have this rider in here that has nothing to do with our police services? But this is why we're here, to make these kind of decisions. It is a lot of money, but when I ran, I know that I ran on one of the points was, what are the core functions of our government? And one of them, really, the main function that we have is to provide for the public safety. And our police services are the front lines of that. And so, yeah, it is more money than we had originally budgeted for. But we've got to take a look at, what do we want? Do we want more money in our bank accounts and less police services on the street? Or is it worth it to spend the money to have the quality police services that I think we all want and deserve. So it was one of those things that, yes, it was more money than we wanted to spend, but this is money that is well spent. Not many of us can imagine what it's like to be a deputy. And the type of job that it is, it's not the type of job where you simply go into your office and sit behind a desk for 8 hours. I mean, the fact that we can help our deputies be better rested, more fresh, however you want to put it, that is a very good benefit to having the police services station here. And as the mayor alluded to, you know, that's an hour of driving. That's tiring. Nobody likes to sit in traffic. Nobody likes to drive. That's sapping the energy and the strength of our police forces. And this is a very good thing, I think, for the city. And so I do think that it's money well spent. And that's why I will vote to support it. Those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any further discussion? Mr. Olivera, please.
Yeah, one more question. I guess, Mr. Killebrew, you could kind of answer this. Where does this money come from? Is this out of reserves or unallocated funds?
It's from the general fund. We had a $560,000 in last year's budget that we're carrying over, and $250,000 in this year's budget was slated for the administrative services wing. That's been deferred. And then $390,000 out of the unassigned fund balance, not out of reserves. And our unassigned fund balance, we've got $1.5 million more in it for this year than we had projected when we put the budget together a year and a half ago.
So this can't be construed as deficit spending?
Deficit spending is a convenient term when you're out on the political stump. As a finance person in local government for 28 years, including several years as an auditor, deficit spending is when you're trending toward not being able to pay your bills, and we're nowhere near that. We've got reserves that are about 33% of our annual revenues, which is incredible. Nothing, before I got here, nothing I'd ever seen. And then annually, our budget is conservative on the revenue side and aggressive on the expenditure side. We could have the 50-year to 100-year storm, and I've got money in my public works budget to be able to pay the bills for that large response that isn't going to happen every year. So we've got it's a budgeted surplus. So the numbers always look better or worse when I put the numbers together than they do by the end of the year, just because it's a just-in-case budget.
And just to emphasize what Mr. Killebrew mentions, I came from a larger full-service city. He came from the city of Long Beach. The reason we do this is because we don't have our own in-house police department or in-house fire department. We have a very efficient contract model where we get all the benefits and more without the administrative overhead and the built-in infrastructure. So again, this is we can do this because we don't have those, and that's the beauty of our contract model here, is that we actively manage it so we get all the benefits of the full-service model without the trappings and the shackles. So again, I agree with everything Mr. Killebrew said.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate those comments, and I applaud Councilman Miller for taking out being in the Navy, there once was a big deal. $600 for a toilet seat in a plane. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, please cast your vote. One vote outstanding, guys. Oh, Scott, I'm sorry, he's not here. Okay. Motion carries 4-0 with one abstention or did not vote for Councilmember Schoeffel. Can somebody please
Yes,
ask
Dwayne,
Mr.
could you get
Schoeffel
Councilmember
to come back
Schoeffel,
to the
please?
chamber? Item number 9 is our next item. Welcome back, Councilmember Schoeffel.
Item number 9 is a recommendation for an award of a contract to Griffith Structures to conduct a preliminary needs assessment for the Surfing Heritage and Cultural Center. As some of the council will recall, gosh, almost 10 years ago, we embarked upon a journey with the Surfing Heritage Foundation. I know Dick Metz, Bob Marty, and Tom Pesman, and a few others. We had a series of community meetings about locating a cultural center, museum in Dana Point to embrace the city's rich surfing culture. At the time, it didn't come to pass. Having said that, we were recently approached by Dick Metz, Bob Mardian, to see if we couldn't find a way to make it happen, possibly on a much smaller scale. So rather than, from learning from the past, what we thought would be the appropriate thing to do would be to conduct a needs assessment where we could really get our hands around, okay, what is it that we could realistically do here in partnership with the Surfing Heritage Foundation? But more importantly, do we have the space? In our 6.5 square miles of paradise, space is very limited. I know I spoke to Marilyn Diddy today about the chance of a senior center. I said, I would love to build a senior center, but there's no land. It's just not, it's not available. And so one of the things we want to do is bring someone on board to take a look at the feasibility, look at the opportunities and the constraints that exist, and come back to the council so we can address this hopefully once and for all. And it may not come to pass, but at least we gave it the old college try. I know Ursula has prepared a presentation tonight, so Ursula, why don't you give us your PowerPoint presentation?
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. So staff has been in discussions with representatives of the Surfing Heritage and Cultural Center, or SHAC, over the past year. These discussions have occurred on and off over the years, as Doug mentioned, but were most recently commenced when Dick Metz was called upon to provide some history regarding the surf industry in Dana Point. And as part of that conversation, there was a renewed sort of excitement about trying to find a location in Dana Point, and Dick Metz is a founding member of SHAC. So SHAC has a world-class Smithsonian accredited collection of surfboards, and that's one thing that has possibly changed since the last time that this discussion occurred, but that's a lot of work and a big deal to get that Smithsonian accreditation. The current location is located in an industrial park in San Clemente, east of the I-5. It lacks some visibility, it has some space constraints, and so the members of SHAC are interested in finding a new facility. The board has an interest in locating in Dana Point because Dana Point really is the birth of the surf industry. So surfing started in Hawaii, but the surf industry, what it is today, the birth of that happened here in Dana Point. It's an authentic story. We own it. We haven't done the best job of telling it. And this museum, locating it in Dana Point, would be a great asset for civic pride as well as for tourism. So the needs assessment it would talk about what are the programming needs of this facility. It would go in and evaluate through physical survey as well as interviews with the members, what programs you need, how big does the building really need to be, and then locations can be vetted once we have that information. It would provide a major tourism asset. It also would provide unique, intimate space. In talking, which you would think that the city with the great hotels and properties that we have, we don't need any more space, but oftentimes groups want to come and leave the property in a more unique environment, and we've actually heard of that quite a bit in the past year, and this would provide another option for that. So again, would help our tourism industry, which is the economic base of this community, and it would celebrate Dana Point's surfing industry legacy. You can see before you a few things. There would be a steering committee of industry leaders and stakeholders. There would be data collection, operational assessment, space needs computation, conceptual planning, and which would result in then a probable cost. Once we have a size of the building, we can estimate how much that would cost. So that would all be part of this needs assessment that's before you this evening for your consideration. And with that, I'll just end that as Doug mentioned, Bob Mardian is here. He's a founding board member of SHAC and past chair. He still serves on the board of directors and is a local business owner and surfer. I'm available to answer any questions you might have. Staff is really excited about this project and what it could do for Dana Point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ursula. Any questions from council members? Mr. Miller.
Yeah, it's really more of a statement than a question. I really want to applaud you for doing this. This is a big deal for our city. We hear about, when we talk about the Doheny Village renovation, the surf culture, the history of what's going on down there. I think it's really important for our community to embrace this and see if there is a way that we can have the surf museum here with all the history and the stories that I've spoken with Mr. Metz and did the tour with him, and the stories are unbelievable. He can tell you about every single board, who owned it, where and when they wrote it. It's amazing. And so I just want to applaud you for bringing this forward. I mean, I think this is important for our community, and I hope that we will be able to come up with a solution for this. Thanks.
Councilmember Oliveira, please.
Thank you. Mr. Shakevich, you touched on it in the introductory remarks, talking about when we had looked at this about 10 years ago. How is this different? Although it's about 3/5 the cost, how is this different than what we did 10 years ago?
Well, the nexus for what we did 10, 12 years ago was the fact that we attempted to build what we call a world-class library on a Dana Point scale, and unfortunately, we were unsuccessful in the state library grant bond. So we had this really terrific facility designed by 30th Street Architects and a concept, and so we were approached by Mr. Metz and Mr. Marty and Tom Pesman to see if we can't do the library, perhaps we can do a museum and cultural center there. And so we began a discussion, and there were some compatibility issues that came up with the surrounding area. And so at that time, the council decided, perhaps this isn't the right time. Reflecting back, Sea Terrace Park is a very, very, very heavily utilized park, and we've really come to achieve a lot of utility there. So candidly, on reflection, it was a good decision, because now the community as a whole really enjoys Sea Terrace Park. I think as we look forward to this opportunity with the harbor project around the corner, with Doheny Village around the corner, I think that, this is really sort of our last stand, if you will, to see if we can make it happen. And so the thought being, as we came together, was to get a specialist in this who could really separate the wheat from the chaff, if you will, and see if there were any opportunities here. So, I think candidly this is a smart move, and it'll give us a little bit more information as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. And I'll have more comments during the discussion.
Any further questions? Okay, public speakers, please. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have 2 speakers this evening. First one will be Griffin Structure, followed by Buck Hill. Oh, I'm sorry. Heather Johnson. Why did I read Griffin Structure? Okay. Heather Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for having me. My name's Heather Johnston. I reside in San Clemente, but I think I spend most of my hours in Dana Point. I'm the executive director of the Dana Point Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here in lieu of my 15 board members. I just want to say that I've been in Dana Point for 5 years now, working for the Chamber, almost 5 years, and it has been extreme pleasure in working with the city council and city staff, and how easy it is to work with your staff, and how much you are doing to improve our community. Dana Point, as you are very well aware of, we are really tied in with tourism, and to bring something forward like this museum is really something that Dana Point can be very, very proud of. Our chamber wholeheartedly supports this museum. Really want to thank the staff for putting the time and effort into trying to make this happen. We are so excited about it. It will be great for tourism. In general, this is something that will put Dana Point on the international map. We will get people from around the world that will come to Dana Point just so they can learn about our surfing heritage. It's something that we should absolutely embrace and makes us unique. And I just really want to say, again, thank you to City Council and City staff for bringing this forward. So we're excited about it.
Thank you for your comments. Buck Hill, please.
I agree with what Heather's just said. I think most of the residents would really love to have this here. It's a matter of pride for all of us, and it's gotten many favorable remarks. My only question is, looking at the statement of work, to determine how big the building ought to be, you know, half of what the one plan was and double what they've got now, and you can save $18,500. The work seems like nothing. I'm going to study and decide how many square feet you need, 4,000. The critical element is where you're going to locate it. It's been very prominently pitched as a possible for the Maker District in Doheny Village. That sounds great. In fact, Hobie still has a big operation there. So is this a good spending of the money? Same as the restrooms. Do we need a study of how many square feet we need, or can we just swag it and then let's go try to find a space to put it, and more importantly, how to finance it and execute it? I think all of the residents would be behind having this here and proud to have it here.
Thank you for your comments. I'll return to the council for discussion. Mr. Olivera, please.
I can't support this project enough. 10 years ago, there was a lot of excitement of getting this into Dana Point. And during that time frame, 10, 15 years ago, I think the fight was on, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the fight was on between Santa Cruz and Huntington Beach as who was the surfing capital of the world. And they kind of left out Dana Point. Yet if you listen to the Beach Boys, you can hear the beaches that are actually located in Dana Point were part of the surf community. This is where it needs to be. This is where, from the Dana Point heritage and surfing heritage, this is where it needs to be. I like the picture that you chose from the Endless Summer. I would challenge anybody, can you tell me who those three people are that are in that photo? I can. And have you been to the museum that currently exists down in San Clemente? I've been there several times. And it's in an industrial area, and being here in Dana Point would, I think it would be constantly attended by our visitors to come here for just the reason of the harbor and the surfing area. I can't support this enough. I'll make a motion that we approve.
Any further council comments?
I'll second Councilman O'Vera's motion, but I'd love to hear some more discussion on this item.
I think I'm fine with it.
Okay. So I'd just like to add that, first of all, love the project. It's the right project for the city of Dana Point. It will, I believe, turn out to be a tremendous tourist asset, an icon of pride for all of the residents here, a touch back to our history, a look into our future, and a real boon for the community. And while I agree with Councilman Muller that it's a great thing that the staff brought this forward at this time, what I'd really like to compliment the staff on is having the good judgment to hire an organization that has such extensive experience in assessing, evaluating, planning, adding incalculable expertise to community cultural facilities such as this. When I look at some of the more local projects they've been involved in, the Bowers Museum of Cultural Art in Santa Ana, the Discovery Science Center in Santa Ana, Environmental Nature Center in Newport Beach, Historic Fox Theater in Fullerton. If you've been to any of those facilities, I think you'll find out that the design, assessment, the evaluation, everything that goes into that is the product of a very specialized expertise from a product that is not fungible, is not something that you can just carry from one thing to the next. If it were a matter of simply determining how much space that you needed to, store the chairs, to store the product, to put up the overhead lighting, I think that would be a very simple project indeed. These are among the most complex that I've ever participated in my background of real estate development. To see them done well is something that I really look forward to. I credit the staff for going outside of your resources, going outside of the enthusiast community, which has a tremendous stake in this whole thing and whose input is extremely valuable, to get a real time-tested professional, and I believe at a very reasonable price to come in here and give this city and its residents and its visitors and its businesses the benefit of something great. We deserve great in Dana Point, not inexpensive, lowest bid, great. Great sometimes costs a little bit more. That's my comment, Mr. Mayor.
Great comments, Councilmember Schoeffel. Thank you. With that, please cast your vote. Motion carries 5-0. Councilmember Oliveira, I do have one question of you. Who are the three members in that picture? I've been dying to know.
The one in front with his back to the picture, that's Bruce Brown with the surfboard on his head. The one farthest is his co-star in the movie, the great, when, they did several movies besides Endless Summer.
Mike Henson and Robert Ogden.
Ken, yes. Thank you, Dick.
Well, thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 12, staff report, Mr. Chalkevis.
Yes, item number 12 is a recommendation that the council consider joining the Concerned Coastal Communities Coalition. As the council is aware, we received communication back in August inviting us to participate in a roundtable of coastal communities at the time whose focus was geared towards the situation at San Onofre, closure and post-closure and the storage of nuclear waste. Having said that, the group has met a few times since that time and is sort of picking up momentum, and they've broadened their scope of discussion. And so as they evolve, they've invited us to join them, and it's one of those organizations where from my standpoint, it's good to have a seat at the table to see what other people are talking about, especially on the coast. We took a position on in support of Darrell Ice's bill on the nuclear waste issue, and so what we did was brought it before you to see if the council wanted to join. In the fiscal impact section, we point out that right now there's no cost to participate, but I would expect that at the next meeting, which is going to occur in the coming weeks, that they're going to discuss a fee structure. And what I've seen these things morph into in about $5,000 to $6,000 a year to participate and have a seat at the table. And that's consistent with what I talked to with the representative from Townsend and Associates. So again, we're recommending that you consider it. If you choose to join, we would further recommend that the mayor be the designee or be the representative, and that he would appoint a designee or the mayor pro tem should he not be able to attend. Happy to respond to any questions.
Questions from council members? Mayor Pro Tem Vic Sort.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, my first question really is, when I saw this, the same as you said in the staff report, it was to respond to the issues with songs and the disposal of the nuclear waste there, which seems like a good idea if we speak with one voice. But my question really is, we as a city took a position and sent that to Congressman Issa.
Sure.
Have we received feedback from him that it would have been a stronger message if we had done?
No, we have not gotten a response from the Congressman's office relating to that. I know it was sent in, so no, we have not.
I guess my question sort of goes to, do we feel like we're being ineffective just as a lone city?
I don't feel we're being ineffective, because quite candidly, we have a good dialogue with all of our elected representatives. I think we have a very good dialogue with all of our elected representatives. I think the issue here is that you have a number of your neighboring cities getting together to talk about issues. I know on one of the discussion points, I read short-term rentals, other issues that are facing other coastal communities. So the question before the council is that you want to have a seat at the table to hear what your neighbors are up to, if you will. Quite candidly, I don't think this is something that is of material to our mission here at Dana Point, but at the same time, it's always good to know what people are talking about, and if they're talking, you might want to have a voice in the discussion. So that's just up to the council to decide if that's their pleasure to.
But there has been some talk, or it is morphing a bit beyond the songs issue, or there are many other issues involved. Have you had any communications with them about what the structure will be? You said it would cost us roughly, I didn't.
5 to 6,000. When I talked to the representative from Townsend, this organization is in its infancy, and it's evolving. And whatever mission it takes on is yet to be determined, as far as I can tell. They haven't even discussed the due structure, if there is going to be a due structure. I know anytime you have Townsend and Associates or another group, they're not going to do it for free. And so I know that there will be a nominal cost spread about the members to help defray the cost of the advocacy and the organizational backdrop that Townsend will provide to the group. But again, I would expect that to be $5,000 to $6,000 a year. One of the things that the council might want to decide to do is attend the next meeting and start attending meetings until they tell you got to pay to play. And then we can always bring something back. But again, it's too early to tell. I don't think you're not committing yourself to any money right now. What you're doing is you're getting in right now at the ground level and being a part of the formation and the evolution. If for some reason the mayor or if the council chooses you, Mr. Vixork, to be the delegate, choose that this isn't something we want to participate in, then I can see the council saying, respectfully declining and saying, we want to take a step back right now.
Thank you. Those are my questions for now. I may have some comments.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any other questions? Seeing none, is there any public comments, Madam Clerk?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll open up discussion. Mayor Pro Tem Vixork.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess you might be able to tell by some of my questions. I saw this on the agenda, and I had some concerns about it. I mean, it seems like it has a good mission if we're going to speak as one voice, and perhaps that could be beneficial to us. But of course, like everything else we've been talking about tonight, it appears there is some cost to this, and I'm not really sure exactly what the mission of this organization is going to be yet. So, to put it as in as concise a way as I can, I'm not really sure what we're getting into here yet, and I'm not sure I'm ready to. I know the recommendation tonight is that we join the coalition. I'm not sure I'm ready to join the coalition tonight. I understand that we did. I read the minutes of the meeting. We did have a council member who attended and maybe can report back as to what is happening. Perhaps we would either send the mayor pro tem, or another council member to the meeting and find out if this is something we actually want to join or not. But I guess in the meantime, I would simply suggest that maybe we could, put this off and bring it back at a future time if we decide that we do want to actually join, especially if one of the things on the meeting agenda tomorrow is going to be the leadership structure, whether there's going to be an executive committee and or an executive director. My understanding is, if we're only paying $6,000 a year, I don't know if the executive director is going to be paid or not. I would assume that he or she would, but our dues may be higher than that. So at this point, I'm not ready to join as I sit here tonight, but I'm not ruling it out. So I would make a motion that we simply put this over for some further review and decision-making.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, I'll second the Mayor Pro Tem's motion, but I would like to have just a little discussion about it.
Yeah. Let's not second it. Because by Robert's Rule of Orders, we have to take a vote on tabling it.
Stop discussion.
On the motion?
What your council rules say, but I suppose there's no penalty if you.
Okay, I withdraw the second and, request, request the ability to make some remarks. First of all, I think that the Mayor Pro Tem is correct in saying he'd like to know, and the council would like to know more about what this organization is, what its potential value is. And I think the way to do that is to attend some of these coalition meetings without a commitment to join so that you can be convinced one way or another whether there's value. Where I think there's value, or what appears to be value to me, is that California coastal cities, especially in Orange and San Diego counties, which is the bulk of the folks interested in this, have a very different business mission than a lot of other cities. They have a lot of different issues to deal with. They're going to have a lot of different issues in the future to deal with. Some of them are legislative in nature, like the federal legislation that this council endorsed. Some of them are best practices as to how you approach certain issues which are very unique to coastal cities and no other cities. I know that just from the discussion that I was a part of at the last meeting that they had last month, it was very interesting for me to see how many different ways of approaching a lot of these problems that have nothing to do with legislation each of these cities have, from Del Mar to Huntington Beach to Laguna Beach, San Clemente. I think the more ideas that you get, the better thinking that you can come up with and the better approach that you can have. I know that when I was mayor, we have a organization that all of you who have been or will be mayor go to, called the South Orange County Association of Mayors. And I used to really look forward to those meetings because we would, as the leaders of the various city councils in South Orange County, get together and talk about the issues of very common concern to us. So can part of that function be covered by the League of Cities? Absolutely. Can it be covered better by the League of Cities? Certainly the legislative discussion and promotion function. But I'll tell you, when it comes to grappling with some of the very unique and very specific problems that coastal cities in California face, not just in Southern California, Central California, Northern California as well, it's better to have more experience, more thinking on these issues. I think if the cost comes in at about $6,000 a year, that's a real bargain to have the benefit of those folks getting together once a month. But by all means, I would encourage the mayor pro tem, the mayor, any council member here to go down there, sit in a meeting. You'll be welcome to be there. You won't be welcome, I guess, if they appoint the executive director, tomorrow night. But I think you could probably go 2, 3, 4 times to decide whether the $6,000 was worth it. And I wouldn't want anybody here voting to join unless they were secure in the knowledge that it really was a valuable experience. That's my report.
Okay. Do we have a second for?
Mr. Mayor?
Oh, I'm
comment?
sorry.
I want to add to Mayor Pro Tem Vexorik's comment. The benefit of this remains to be seen, but it is a good start in my mind. A bit of history is in nuclear power, 30 years ago, the federal government promised a repository for spent nuclear fuel. And Yucca Mountain in Nevada was built until Senator Reid pulled the plug on it. And so now all the nuclear power plants that have shut down have their fuel stored on site. And that's contrary to what the federal government promised us, to remove that problem or whatever you want to call it. So what can this committee accomplish? Well, a united voice that's very strong. It can gain momentum, but I go along with Pro Tem on let's see how this thing works.
Councilmember Miller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was thinking about this. I'm active in the League of Cities, and the first thing that popped into my mind when I started hearing about this is every one of the cities that's involved in this is also a member of the League of Cities. And why couldn't we, we're a little bit behind the curve now. I mean, it always sounds great to have a local organization, but why couldn't we use the League of Cities? And when we do have legislative issues, we can use them because they're quite good at it. I mean, that's what they do. and we could create one voice. We could create a caucus within League of Cities with all these communities, use the legislative weight of the league, but we could also have monthly meetings to discuss local issues and what, best practices and what we're doing down here, what the issues are along the southern Orange County and northern San Diego County coast. It seems like everybody's got their hand out. I don't want to say it's a handout for this because they invited us. We don't have to accept if we choose not to. But there's always another organization that would like us to join and be a part of it. And it comes down to how many are we going to have? I mean, they start to feel a little disjointed to me at some point when we have these big, large statewide organizations that we could utilize. And so I'm not saying I'm against this. I don't know that the league would be interested in it. I don't know if these communities would be interested in it. But I think it's something we need to explore a little bit further and find out a little bit more about what this organization is trying to accomplish instead of, jumping in with both feet and finding out, hey, this isn't really something that's good for our community. So I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, with that said, I'll second the motion then.
Ellie took your second.
I'd like to second the Mayor Pro Tem's motion, and I would also like to urge any of you up here to attend some of those meetings so that you can be informed purchasers.
Okay. Not hearing any requests for further discussion, please cast your vote. Motion carries 5-0.
If I could, Mayor Tomlinson, I'm sure that I'm going to get a phone call in the morning. Would one of the council members like to volunteer to attend the meeting tomorrow?
I'm not available.
I would be happy to attend Mr. Shotkevis.
Thank you, Mr. Shelf. I'll let him know.
Yeah.
Yes. Item number 14 is a professional service agreement for communication consulting services with Communications Lab, specifically with Brian Lockery. This is something we endeavored in a few months ago. Several years ago when we were preparing the budget, there was a belief that we needed to enhance our PIO programming. And we had put in a formal public information officer position that would have been contracted, but at a much higher level. Unfortunately, due to the recession, that project was not approved. Having said that, we've tried to, enhance it through our social media, and I know Rachel has worked with Jeff and Shayna to try and get updates out on the various social media sites, and they've done a very good job. But working with Communications Lab for the last 4 to 6 months has been very refreshing. Brian Lockery has been able to open up doors with the Orange County Register, the Voice of OC, other types of media outlets. We find that we can get our press information out there and in the hands of the reporters who do the actual writing. So with that, we're very happy with the level of service. When we did it under my initial authority to see how it worked. And I will also defer to comments from Mr. Kilbrew and Mr. Munoz, but I think we're well served by having Communications Lab and Brian Lockery working with us to help us reach out to the media and get the news out there and get the word out there. So with that, we would be happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Shotkevis. Questions from council? Mr. Schofel.
Just briefly, Mr. Shotkevis, what is a public information officer, an employed public information officer cost per year for a city the size of Dana Point?
When we were contracting out, it was in excess of $100,000 a year. It was very expensive, and then you had the associated costs and what have you. And I believe the budget was about $175,000 to $190,000 a year when you factored it all in.
And I don't know the answer to this question, so I feel great about asking it. But how many cities have public information officers to deal with their communications requests at the size of a small city like Dana Point?
Not many who request at the size of Dana Point. What they typically do is they deal with crisis management teams. A few years ago, we had the need to contract, and it was very expensive at the time for a couple of specific cases. But again, this is I think, a fair and nominal cost for this service.
Okay, that's all for now.
Mayor Pro Tem Vic Sorick, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This might be a legal question. I was looking at section 1 of the actual contract agreement, and it says consultant agrees to work on the project. Hereafter referred to as the contract work, outlining the scope of work. I wasn't able to find exactly what that meant. And perhaps it's simply a generalized scope of work, and the project is meant to refer to that. But maybe you could just clarify, what exactly are we contracting for?
I believe that, I'll defer to Patrick again, but I believe that might be a reference. I think you could very easily remove the project, will perform the work as identified on the scope of work.
If I could, the project is essentially paid for with a retainer, and it's a monthly amount that's going to pay for the scope of services that are available to us on our call. So the scope of services that are in here would equate to the project. It's a standard contract language for them, I'm sure, where they're actually contracted for specific projects, but we're looking at the scope of work in this one.
We're not looking to hire them for any particular issue. We're looking to put them on a retainer for anything that
They're on the bench.
might arise. I guess to follow up on Councilman Schoeffels, to do the job of what a public information officer.
Exactly, without having a full-time public PIO on the books.
Okay. And that, just doing the quick math in my head, if we're, I guess you said it was over $100,000 for a full-time employee, and so obviously this would be less than that.
Of course.
Okay.
And that's typically our standard of being a contract city.
How did we come about in finding this particular firm?
Word of mouth, by reputation. Mr. Lockery, I believe, does work for the TCA and other large agencies, and he's been very effective at it. When you look at the attached material, it identifies some of their clients and some of their work experience here. So again, it was by reputation, and I view this as when you're looking for a specialist, you want to make sure you get the best and someone who has a good reputation, and Mr. Lockery does have that reputation.
Okay, yeah, I think you understand. I mean, in the spirit of the conversation tonight about saving money, just to make sure that we are, shopping around before we just go ahead and sign, a PR firm, and if we've been using them, we've been happy with the results.
Absolutely. And in this particular case, it's the individual, Mr. Lockery. When you look at his experience and his track record, and the fact that I believe we're getting him at a very fair price, that's why it's before you tonight.
Okay, and the terms are $6,000 retainer. Every month we're paying that?
Yes.
To them, and right now we don't have a specific project for them to work on, but if is that earned by them, whether we don't have work for them to do, or do they only charge for the work that they do out of that retainer? You understand my question?
We do have work that they're working on right now, and at the same time, it's when an issue comes up, we pick up the phone and they take care of it for us. So the $6,000 covers that, and when we don't pick up the phone, it's possibly a good day. But having said that, it's $6,000 for that time.
I was just trying to see if, perhaps they may have a month where they do less than $6,000 of work, or is this simply $6,000 that they've earned once they get it, or they are billing us out of the retainer? This might make more sense to.
They're covering their efforts out of the retainer, so that's their promise to us.
Okay, so it could be less than $6,000.
Could be less and could be more.
Could be less, could be more.
Could be more. Okay, but not to exceed $36,000 over the course.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Shuffle.
Yeah, just one other thing, so that you can kick the tires even more. I noticed that if we're unhappy with the value that we're getting for the services performed, we can end this agreement on 30 days written notice. So
that's correct.
We're
sir.
not stuck for the entire 6 months. Our financial exposure at any point is the next $6,000 that's
Excellent
paid.
point.
So thank you for putting that provision in as well. I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem, we need a better exhibit than no exhibit for Exhibit A. And I'm sure that would be the case with the final agreement. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Olivera.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something I've been discussing with the city manager over the last couple of years. This is the type of person that we needed for some things that we need to get word out to the public in a fairly rapid manner. I don't know Brian Lockery personally, but having been associated with Fauble Public Affairs, I know Roger Fauble personally. He worked for Southern California Edison when I was working for Southern California Edison, and he was in their public affairs office, and he did an outstanding job staying ahead of the curve on things that are going on. So if he's got his influence on this team, I'm convinced.
Okay. Any further questions? If not, we'll move to public comment. Any public comments, Madam Clerk?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, move it back to the council for discussion.
I'd move the recommended item.
I'll second it. Any other further discussion? If not, please cast your vote. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay. At this time, the city clerk will read the titles of any ordinance listed on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no ordinance titles to read this evening.
I knew
Thank you.
the answer before I asked the question, but thank you. All right, public comments portion of the agenda. There will be a 3-minute time limit per person and an overall time limit of 15 minutes for this public comments portion of the agenda. At the mayor's discretion, the balance of public comments will be heard after the new business portion of the agenda. All comments are to be directed to the city council and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain a professional, courteous decorum during their comments. State law prohibits the city council from taking action on specific items unless it appears on the posted agenda. The city clerk will distribute any handouts you may have. Please state your name and city of residence for the record. First speaker tonight will be Bob Fowler from the VFW. Mr. Fowler. Being approached in mass. Uh-oh.
First of all, I want to thank you all for the business finance degree, I think. Now I have 2 degrees. You did a good job. Boy, I learned a lot. I gotta go home and take a bottle of Excedrins. What I got here is, first of all, Mayor, City Council, City Manager Doug Chikavies, I just want to thank you for availing to us this time right now. We want to do a presentation. I'm going to make it quick as possible. Believe it or not, I can. But first, on behalf of the VFW, Dana Point, VFW 9934, I sincerely thank you, and you have our utmost gratitude for all you guys do in support and help for us. I'd like to introduce just a couple of people. This is Marcia. She's our adjutant. She's been with us about 1.5 years. She's a retired combat Marine, right? 22.5 years. She does an excellent job. We have Bill Manners, who is our founder of the post 20 years ago, original commander and our quartermaster, bean counter, and he does a great job. And finally, I'm going to turn this over to, oh, by the way, I'm Bob Fowler, those who are not familiar with me. And myself, I'm a, past All-American commander. Now I'm a service officer of the lead team. We have 10 service officers. You're lucky if a post has 1. And all of them are combat vets. 2 of them are ladies, thank God. And they do an excellent job. And I think we're at about 3,600 claims that we're able to successfully put through, get through the bureaucracy, and help our local veterans and their families to get the benefits they earned, deserved, and entitled to. With that said, Wayne, he's our senior vice commander. He's another Vietnam vet, and we were the 2 grunts running platoons and squads in Vietnam. All yours, Wayne.
Now that you've taken my entire 3 minutes, I respectfully request that I have my clock reset. Mike, reset the clock, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Tomlinson, City Council members, members of City staff. My name is Wayne Yost, 35-year resident of Dana Point.
I'm the Senior Vice Commander of Dana Point Veterans of Foreign Wars, Post 9934, and our office is located just directly below us here. For those of you who may not be familiar with our organization, we currently have over 660 members, all of whom are combat veterans, and most of who reside in our local surrounding communities. Our post has had the honor of achieving an All-American status, and of the 4,400 Veterans of Foreign Wars posts throughout the country, only the top 25 accomplished this goal. We are the only post in the country that has received All-American status 8 of the 9 past years. And this is done through the dedication and hard work that our members perform in our community on a daily basis. Our primary mission, as Bob stated, is to assist our veterans, active duty military personnel, and their families. It is through the generosity of the citizens of Dana Point that we are able to accomplish this undertaking. However, our mission has greatly expanded over the past few years. I'll give you a few examples, such as instilling patriotism in our schools through essay contests that have cash and scholarship awards, recognizing and awarding our teachers by presenting them with Teacher of the Year awards. We're very instrumental in instituting scouting programs with our Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, and Girl Scouts. But perhaps the most rewarding of our tasks is our wonderful partnership and mutual cooperation with our city of Dana Point and the numerous events that we participate in throughout the years. I moved here with my family 35 years ago because Dana Point offered my household the charm of a small beach community combined with a friendly and safe environment. Although we observe much polarization in many communities, especially today, and the dissension du jour in many areas has resulted in extreme conflict between those communities and the police authorities whose mission is to protect their citizens. Dana Point is blessed to have civic leaders and support personnel in the form of a community-based policing service. These officers, who oftentimes literally place their own safety on the line so as to protect our citizens, are truly to be appreciated. It is almost with a comic pleasure to read our weekly sheriff's blotter in the Dana Point Times. For example, in this past issue, our deputies responded to dog locked in a car, loud music from a beer pong game, neighbor complaining about a drone flying over her house. However, not to minimize the genuine hard work that our police officers perform, how many communities would love to have these types of problems? These cherished attributes start at the top. Chief Chilton, if I could ask you to please join me. As I said, this starts from leadership at the top, and Chief Russ Chilton is such a leader. He has inspired his deputies as well as our civilian service officers to become caring partners with our citizens. Therefore, Chief Chilton, on behalf of not only the veterans of foreign wars, but representing all of the citizens of Dana Point, I am honored to present you with this certificate of appreciation. Please keep in mind that this indebtedness extends to every single member of your department. Congratulations and job well done.
Can you start the 3 minutes? This is truly an honor, and when you want to talk about a strong relationship with members in the community, that is really the foundation of community-based policing. It starts with communication and relationships. It's no secret it's been a very trying year for law enforcement. We're seeing things happen in our country. But I got to tell you, every day I come to work, I have, and I'm serious, every day someone comes up to me or one of the men and women of Dana Point Police Services and thanks them for their service. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And you're right, it's not just me. It's truly the men and women that come to work here. It's a very desirable place to work. I work hard,
at trying to recruit the best officers for Dana Point, and this is truly an honor. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the VFW. That was a very nice presentation to Lieutenant Chilton here. Thank you. Okay, next speaker is Eric Porwowski, followed by Gerald Derlashon. Mr. Porwowski? Not present. Gerald Darlashon?
Did it right the first time.
I tried to overpronounce it, okay.
Good
thank you.
evening. I'm Gerald Derlashon, and thank you all for your service, especially you. Doesn't lessen the service of any one of you, though. I'm here to talk about that drone he was talking about. I was the one that called on that. 3 quick questions. I've lived in Dana Point for 20 years, and only in the last couple weeks, we've had to deal in our house with a drone not just flying by our windows. We have an ocean view, so we don't have blinds on our windows. We keep it open. And we don't just see the drone fly by. It disturbs us when it hangs out in front of our windows. So 3 quick questions, and you'll answer no to all of them. How would you like it if you're on your deck or in your backyard or patio, and without any notice, a drone hits you in the face, or maybe a grandkid that's with you on your deck or in your backyard with no notice? We've had 3 drones crash in yards in our neighborhood in Dana Point that I know of, 3. How would you like to be photographed and have those photographs put on YouTube or somewhere? Photographs that you didn't even know were being taken, perhaps, but you learned afterwards they were taken and they were of you. That hasn't happened in our neighborhood, but I would bet I could find references to where it's happened elsewhere. And lastly, how would you like to have a drone used to look into your home and determine where exits and entrances were, or maybe where valuables were? Drone flying is not necessarily a bad thing. Drone flying in residential neighborhoods is a bad thing. The FAA tells me when I call, hands off. We can't do anything. We only deal with commercial drone flying. The sheriff department tells me we really can't do anything except knock on the door and hopefully make a point. There's no ordinance against it. I'm here to ask tonight that Dana Point investigate the possibility of creating an ordinance that will help our deputies and protect our citizens in neighborhoods. I'm not talking about any other place now, but residential neighborhoods. I'd like to see that done, and I would volunteer to lend some of the research I've done on this subject, and be happy to do that. It's tonight, much of our discussion has been about technology and about public safety. This is something new. Let's stay ahead of the curve, which you've said a few times tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas, if I could just respond.
You may, Mr. Shopkavy.
This is something that we're all concerned about, sir. You're not alone. I know the grand jury recently released a report on drones, and I know each city in the county is working very carefully with the Sheriff's Department and County Council to identify an appropriate way that we can write ordinances to do exactly what you want us to do. So I know I'll be at the city manager executive committee meeting tomorrow afternoon. I'll get an update and pass that along to the city council. But I know it's something that's being discussed at the county level because right now, candidly, there's a lot of finger pointing going on. And what we need to do is find a resolution that we can all agree upon, will deal with the issue, and can be enforced in a court. So, sir, it's going to take a little bit longer, but you're not alone, and we're doing everything we can to address that as quickly as we can.
Thanks for the feedback.
My pleasure, sir.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Penny Maynard, please.
Hello. This past June, there was a primary election in Dana Point. I see the results as a need for better communication between the city council and staff and residents in the community. Rather than continue on a path that may not be productive, I have a proposal that I believe will work toward a solution and will connect the community with City Hall. And that's the one thing we've been hearing in all the forums, too, that there is not a connection. It's a disconnect. Of the 400-plus cities or towns in California, over 100 have chosen to elect their city councilors by district, including in San Juan Capistrano and Santa Barbara, and San Clemente is now discussing it. An initiative was brought to the council. Council districts are patterned after the U.S. Constitution, where senators are elected at large and congressmen and women are elected by district. And some cities have at-large, a combination of at-large, or and individual districts. And in San Juan, they just retained the same number of city councilors, but they're voted by district voters. And the residents seem satisfied. I spoke with a former mayor who told me that they're happy with it. The reasons I see is this is a solution. A solution to perceived concerns. Here are the reasons, I'm sorry. It connects residents to elected officials. It's a solution, one possible solution to divisions. If you ask any resident who is your city councilor, they cannot name an individual. They say all of them. A city councilor, or yours, would hold regular meetings in your district, sometimes or often bringing a city staff member or a department head that would address your district's concerns. You would have one individual to contact on any issue in your district. Your city councilor could go to city staff or to the city council meetings on your behalf and bring your district concerns to the largest audience when action is actually taken. Think how it could be if an elected official is elected to your district and must come to district residents for their vote. I have lived under that type of city government for many years, and I love it. Of course, this would be discussed at community forums, and only if it is the will of the people would it be enacted, and it would be phased in over a period of time so as not to disrupt what exists today. And I also think it's time for Dana Point Beach, California. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker is Lynn Taylor. Lynn Taylor. Not present. Monica Clark. Monica Clark. Okay, that concludes our public comments portion this evening. There are no public hearings this evening. There's also no unfinished business. There is also no new business. I'll turn it over to staff reports for Mr. Shakevis.
Thank you, Mayor Tomlinson. I want to reflect back, a couple weekends ago, my family and I and Fran went to the barbecue, and it was so nice walking into the city competition area. And I was greeted by staff everybody was having a good time. Police were there, building staff was there, everybody was there, and Mike Rose captured the day with perfect barbecue in all 4 categories. Mike, congratulations. But what I saw there was a team come together, and it was really something special. And I saw that tonight when Brandy was acknowledged. I think everybody from Public Works was here. And that really speaks to the team that we have here, and that's what I'm most proud of is the team. And Russ, our policing team, everybody, you guys just amaze me, and I want to thank you for everything you do. You're really special. So with that, Just want to say Fran turns 97 in 2 days, so you'll see her and I out walking about in the harbor probably. But 97 years old, going strong. That's all I've got.
Mr. Jaquez, Mr. Munoz.
I'd like to say congratulations to a professional sports team that might have won a playoff game tonight, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody who's in the meeting and not watching on TV, so I'll let it go at that.
Okay. All right, well, let's move over to council reports. Start with Mr. Schoffel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only one comment. We had the third art walk down Del Prado, and I have to tell you, they get better and better and better. I'd like to thank some specific folks on the city staff. Kelly Rander, she was out there with Cindy Nelson, Rachel Johnson, also helped put this thing up. I'm sure Ursula had something to do with it at some point along the way. Yeah, Ursula hired these very fine staff people. Also, Heather Johnson, our Chamber of Commerce, was part of the sponsorship and execution team. And a special shout out to Jack Loconsolo and Max Fisher, who are local merchants down there, who not only invested in terms of purchasing talent and time and everything else, but they were all over the place. They were just up and down the street and really participating in a way that you would expect when a business area gets together for an activity like that. It was a real credit to the city. I think it's getting better and better, and I think the best is yet to come. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Schoffel. Mr. Oliveira.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also sit on the Orange County Mosquito Vector Control District, and today we were notified of a death in La Habra that was associated with the West Nile virus. That's an important issue with the Vector Control District, looking at it and following it very carefully. Other than that, I have no other comments, and I'll be turning in my meeting minutes to our city clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to report that I attended the Monarch Beach Resort Hospitality Academy. Is that what that was called? It was a joint effort between Capital Unified School District, the City of Dana Point, and the Monarch Beach Resort to set up a class for high school students that are interested in getting into the hospitality industry. I think they had, 14 or 17? 16 students. And I just want to thank the staff for all their hard work on that. It was a great event. The students were very excited. And it's important for a city like us, who we survive on the hospitality and tourism business, to actually create programs for our young people to see what that industry is all about and hopefully encourage them to get into it. So I want to thank staff. I know the Capital Unified staff and Ian's gone from Monarch Beach Resort, but I want to thank them as well for all their hard work in getting that started. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Miller. Mayor Pro Tem Victoric, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing to report.
Thank you. I also have nothing to report, and I will get in my list of meetings to the clerk's office. Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, I hereby adjourn the City Council meeting on October 18th, 2016.